Hello, everyone. Welcome to iSchoolConnect. Thank you for taking out the time to connect with us on a Saturday evening. We won't take up a lot of your time, but I'm sure the information that will come from this webinar will be very important and very helpful for you. Sabha will be the speaker for the session. She has 5+ years of experience in counseling students who have gone to study abroad. And she will be here to present you with information about, applications, SOPs, interviews, and everything. And while she is going through her seminar, through her webinar, please feel free to, populate the Q&A section with any sort of doubts or questions that you have. After the presentation is over, she will be taking up all the questions. All over to you, Sabha.
Thank you, Sritama. Very good evening to all the attendees. As Sritama rightly mentioned, thanks again for taking out time on weekend. I assure you that this presentation is as entertaining and as interactive as possible. Also, at the end, I'm sure you will gain enough of information to kind of, start your baby steps, or if you're at an advanced level, you'll gather more knowledge about how to take your way forward in a more constructive way. So I think we are about time. We shall begin. And is that fine, Sritama? We'll obviously, as and when the crowd will come up, we'll continue.
Yeah. Sure. We can start.
Okay, so without any further delay, I'll begin the entire presentation. So very good evening. The agenda for today is something to help you take an understanding of the applications, SOPs, interviews. Of course, there are a lot more in-depth technicalities that I will be going through. Okay. Before I move forward, one very quick thing. Of course, you can populate all your questions in the Q&A box, because that's where we'll try to pick it up. And in case if there is something that you want to, notify about audibility or visibility in the presentation, you can quickly notify us on the chat box. Yeah. So today's the topic is applications, SOPs, interviews, which will largely be covering the topics that you can see in front of my screen. I would obviously be speaking about the necessary components of an application, the kind of test you are supposed to take, and what is the kind of average score that you need to have, the timelines for it. There will be a very in-depth, intense discussion about the SOPs, essays, LORs, all the topics that you really need to work upon. And that's kind of formulating a very important part, because that's the ultimate file, you can say, that is submitted to the university. Apart from that, obviously, I'll be covering important aspects of applications that you as a student needs to keep in mind. Last and most important, towards the end is your interviews. So that's something which is crucial. A lot of time we don't at the beginning think about it, but to have an initial understanding and then preparing for it is very important. So that's something I will be taking you through, both the type of interviews, explaining you the do's and don'ts, because that's the first time it's kind of you're interacting with a panelist or the visa officer. So there's a lot of things that you need to keep in mind and be, doing it in the right way. And lastly, being a session by the iSchoolConnect, I will obviously explain you how the whole mentoring will happen here and what are the services that you can avail through iSchoolConnect. Yeah. So let's start off by, a very basic thing about, you can see a question on screen. There'll be a poll which will be run by Sritama, that what seems to be the most daunting part of your application. You've seen a couple of points in my previous slide, and you might have some of your own. So let's start off with the poll and understand what is it that you find more daunting, more intimidating, a little overwhelming. All right, so I think quite of them are filling it, I think. Okay, I would request all the panelists to chip in their ideas, so we have an understanding, and maybe this will also help us understand which points we can analyze or further or maybe take specific webinars on that particular topic of application. So your answers mean there's a lot of importance for us to understand that. Okay, there's mostly about SOPs, applications. I think none find the test daunting. That's interesting. Interviews, no one. Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. Okay. There are answers pouring for the test as well. LORs, I think everyone is sorted with their recommenders. It seems like. Interesting. Okay. Still none for LORs. Great. Happy to know you know your recommenders and they know you well. Perfect. Perfect. So I think we went the poll, Shritama.
Yeah, it's ended. We can go ahead.
Okay, great. So, of course, as expected, there is a lot of people who have fed in the answers that SOPs and essays are, of course, the most daunting and the most time-taking task, which I will definitely agree with you. And there is a lot of my chunk in the presentation devoted to help you understand that. Applications, the basic nuances, that's absolutely correct because every university has a different sort of format and requirements. So that's also something we'll be speaking about. Tests, I'm surprised there are a little slice of crowd who finds it a little daunting. But of course, if you go for more test-oriented or compulsory programs, that's where you might need more hand-holding and understanding of that. Cracking interviews, yes, there is a certain format or a template that you need to be prepared of. Of course, it's free-flowing, but there is a way to approach it. So that's also correct. LORs, okay, I'm surprised that no one has answered that or taken that into consideration. So fair enough, no problem. We'll cover that as well so that you have more understanding about it. So now let's move further and let's take the basic part. Before I move into all these heavy topics, let's start off with something easygoing. Yeah. So firstly, this is a basic chart, or you can say a roadmap of your study abroad. Okay. So all this is all this we are trying to say through this whole timeline is that study abroad is a complete dedication or an engagement of total 1 year. Okay, so if you plan for instance, we have taken a 2023 intake, correct? So you need to do your planning a year ahead. Okay, if you're planning a fall, you need to start off at least by this year, August, September, and start off if you're planning a Jan intake. Similarly, you should start off in the Jan 22. Because if you see, there are quite 8 to 9 pointers that you need to capture, and all of it are time consuming because somewhere you are personally involved, somewhere your college is involved. So there are a lot of steps. So if you see from 2022 year, you need to obviously start researching on the schools, have an understanding of the program that you want to study. That's also very crucial. Secondly, you need to then understand that if my program requires, of course, from the proficiency test, do they require some other tests, which I'll be covering soon. So then that preparation starts, correct? About, setting a target score, setting a target date, and kind of, figuring out how to, approach the test, right? Then working on your academics consistently and simultaneously to make sure that you have, had a great academic score, and also at the same time collating the mark sheets, right? After that, a little more closer to 3 to 4 months from your beginning, you need to kickstart your university application. That's the time. If you're planning a fall 23 intake, the 9th month of a year refers to something like between August, September, right? Then you need, and of course, all the applications are a little lengthy. Some of them could be shorter. It takes a while. So it's not that if you plan 6 universities, you can finish it overnight. You can do that, but of course, it becomes a little hectic. So proper planning will help you, utilize that August, September phase to fill up the application, understand it properly, and then do the submission and monitor your whole way of submitting in that same period, maybe finalizing your SOPs, LORs, and stuff like that. Correct. Paying the application fees, again, the 7th month and the application stage and the essay stage is kind of overlapping, or you can say it's kind of going hand in hand, because you are preparing your drafts, making it work. Apply for scholarship, very important, correct? Because of course, the more the merrier. So it's always good to be ready and understand the whole financial aspect, because that's also different. Some universities have their own separate timeline. There's a separate way of approaching it. There is essay. So that also again requires time apart from the regular application you are doing. Then after you get to maybe, your admit, you have to start off your loan process, apply and approach the banks, get the whole funds sorted, take your visas, book your tickets, and finally you're good to go next year. So in a way, it's kind of a year-long process. Now, some of those who have just, instantaneously made a plan that, okay, no, I now want to go for a study abroad. And, according to this roadmap, maybe I'm a little late. Nonetheless, you can still approach some experts, mentors from iSchoolConnect, and they'll help you understand that what is it that you need to kind of, take it together, which steps you need to club, and still you can make it to a fall intake or the January intake, which are the next immediate ones. Okay, so in case if you all are the attendees who are quite early, well and good. In case you all have just thought of, do not panic. We are here to completely help and support your application process. Okay, the most important thing is this is just a screenshot of helping you understand that what all constitutes the application, because a lot of you all did mention that the whole I could gather that the whole understanding of what is application is something that you need to have a basic understanding. So for your information, see, an application largely consists of firstly very basic things like your information, your applicant information or student information. You can refer yourself to any of these terms. So basically it's your name, your address, your country of residence, gender, the very basic details about you. Secondly, the applications will largely require your test scores, which I have been talking about. It's your either GRE, SAT, GMAT, depending on whether you go for undergrad or postgrad program. Of course, you have to complement this with your proficiency test scores, which is Ielts or TOEFL, which are obviously mandatory. Then your application gives a due importance to your extracurricular or co-curricular activities. So even if you go for a very undergrad tech-based program or a postgrad tech-based program, doesn't mean that it's going to be just about focus on your academics. The more holistic you are, the more diverse you are in yourself, in your approach, it will help the university to make a better choice and have an understanding of you holistically, correct? And your application also looks into your academics. As I mentioned earlier, it's basically your accolades, basically your academic scores, basically how you have been performing in particular subjects or your overall performance. So that information, you need to put it in a particular format, correct? It's not just submitting mark sheets, but then we have to also get a transcript for that. So that's something you will have to upload it at the application portal, correct? The proficiency test scores, which I think I just spoke about. So those are also of importance for undergrad level as well as postgrad. Of course, there will be some waivers available depending on the university and subjective to the university requirements and terms and conditions. So that's something you will have to look it up personally and have an understanding of. Of course, we as mentors at iSchoolConnect will definitely help you understand how it can be done and what are the process to get waivers on any of the tests available. Okay. Apart from that, then comes your and my favorite thing is basically the writing, the SOPs, essays, writing of LORs, correct? So that's something that also has to be uploaded to the application portal, and it has to go in a very systematic format which looks like a final draft and is really worked upon. Lastly, work experience. Now, this cannot be, very much catering to the undergrad students, but for postgrad, yes, some of the programs have a mandatory work experience, like MBA does require. Some of the, specific programs in Germany requires, correct? So those, or if you have even done internships and stuff, so that information also has to go along with supporting documents for your work experience. And lastly is to give your resume. Okay, again, there is a very particular format that has to be followed for a CV or a resume, and that's something we will be obviously guiding and mentoring you for. So these are some of the basic things. Of course, they look a lot, and that's why we need a roadmap to understand how you can, chart all of this and make it ready for your applications. Okay, now before we go further, there's another quick poll which I would like my audience to, which I would like them to, understand that, okay, basically what entrance tests are you planning to take? This will help me simplify your basic needs and kind of make this presentation far more interesting and constructive. So Sritama, you can run the poll, please. Great. So I think the options are in front of you. You can click on the test that you have been, planning to take, whether it's a postgrad test like a GRE, GMAT, undergrad SAT, ACT, proficiency, IELTS, TOEFL, PT. Okay. Interesting. IELTS. Okay. Perfect. IELTS is the most popular choice for proficiency. Fair enough. I think we have a lot of students from the technical background and want to go for, I think, technical studies like CS or any fields of engineering. That's why GRE is the choice. Perfect, perfect. Okay, great. So yes, as the results show, quite a few of them have chosen GRE, which means that you all are going for some technical programs. Interesting. IELTS, of course, it's kind of mandatory. So I think every student going for undergrad, postgrad program it's kind of compulsory for them to give. SAT, yes, interesting, because if you go for undergrad course, you're required to give SAT for most of the countries and programs. Okay, so let's now take a quick look at what are the tests. I think you all are mostly aware of it, but this is just a little bit more of a detailing to help you, get a initial understanding. I think quite a lot of them are doing GRE. Great if you are doing, great if you have not started. Of course, iSchoolConnect has a test prep as well. So you can definitely look into that aspect as well. Now coming to understand these tests, so GRE and GMAT, the third in the thing. So they both cater to the graduate programs. GRE is, of course, more for people who are going for technical fields, and GMAT is taken by people who are going for MBA, MIM, to some extent, any of the management-related programs, like to some extent, business analytics, marketing analytics, supply chain, correct? So this is the courses it largely caters. In front of your screen, there is an average score. There's a total score given, out of what the test is, of like GRE is out of 340, and the third in the list is GMAT. So it's out of 800, correct? The accepting countries. So this is very important because, if you are planning a particular, obviously most of y'all will have popular destination like UK, Canada, USA, Singapore, Australia, some of the European nations, correct? So this is just to give you an understanding about, what are the kind of countries and what are they accepting, which scores are they accepting, which is important for us to understand. And you as a student, how much it is, what is the average you should get. Of course, if you're planning a very top-notch university, for GRE crowd, I would suggest you to go anywhere beyond 325 plus if you have a Cornell or, Georgia Tech or something like that in mind. But for GMAT, similarly, if people are planning, a top school like, LBS or something like Yale, Dartmouth, Columbia, a 720 plus bar is much more recommended. This is something mediocre, medium, basic average score you should have in order to get yourself qualified for at least most of the mid-rank universities, correct? Across it, we have given the kind of topics it covers. So GRE and GMAT, again, they are not the same type of test. They could have a format similar, but the approach, the concept, the methodology is totally different. So just a little information over them. The gist of, it might cover analytical writing, quant and verbal, but the questions are different for sure. And there's a cost written for each test because all these tests do have a cost. So you have to separately go on their website and register for it. So for GRE, it is ETS, for GMAT, it's MBA.com. So these are the two websites where you'll have to go and individually register for the test, pay the fees, and take the kind of timeline that you have planned and the location closest to you. Yeah. Then a little bit on the SAT, because we do have people in our audience who are planning to go for undergrad studies. So the total score that's the second in the list. That's what I'm referring to. It's out of 1600. Most of the countries are accepting, and I believe these are the countries you might be planning for your study abroad. Average score is something that you need to get around 1060, or if you plan a very top-notch universities, of course, go beyond 1400. Yeah. Again, SAT has math, writing, critical reading, all of these topics, and the cost for it is around $100. There is again as it is for the GRE GMAT, there is a separate website where you have to go. It's, I think, College Board, right? It's referred as College Board, and that's where you will have to go check the available dates and accordingly book your test. Now, one specific information for the SAT students. SAT doesn't happen all year round. It happens, I think, 4 to 5 times in a year, particularly, let's say, in September or December. These are the kind of months it occurs. So for you all to kind of plan it very early, because it's not that if you are giving it next month, there's a possibility there's no test available next month. Unlike GRE GMAT, which happens all year round, so you can choose any date from the calendar. Yeah. Then I think we have very little students for ACT. Again, ACT is very much oriented to USA, in case if you all are interested. And there are these proficiency English tests like Ielts and TOEFL. Okay, now both are applicable to undergrad, postgrad students, as I have been mentioning so far, and accepted by almost all the countries now. There's nothing like if you give an Ielts, you cannot go to USA. This was a myth earlier, but now you, even with an Ielts, you can go to US schools, or all of that is kind of sorted. The average score, which is mandatory in Ielts, is nothing less than 6 or 6.5 band, and your individual band should not be less than 5. It's a test out of 9 bands. Band is nothing but a score range. Yeah. And for TOEFL, it is out of 120, 90 to 90 plus is good to go for any of your universities. Right. So this is a gist of the important tests, the dates and the cost. So you can accordingly, choose your test and start preparing way in advance to kind of get that thing sorted. Yeah. Okay. Now comes something which is very important for us, and that is an understanding. So test and all is pretty specific, pretty straightforward in a way of, how you have to approach it. But SOP is a vast topic, okay? And it needs a certain sort of mentality or a mindset to approach it, okay? SOP is nothing but a statement of purpose, okay? It's basically an introduction that you need to give to your admissions committee, okay? And it's a longish essay, depending on the word count or word limit that university gives. If there is none, generally your SOP should be around 500 to 600 or even 1,000 words, depending on the kind of program and university you have chosen. Okay, so the first column over here on my screen is just giving you an gist of what an SOP is. Okay, so it's just an essay that you need to write to university and help them understand why you should be, a deserving candidate for their program and for their university. Okay, the second aspect on my screen is who are you writing for and what are they expecting. Okay, so I will be in the next slide covering a bit about what are they expecting, and who are you writing for is basically you are addressing it to the admissions committee, or to some extent for some programs there are these individual field or individual branch representatives who also listen to the SOP. So you're writing it for the admissions committee, because you are not going to personally sit there and explain your profile, right? It's only these all letters and words that are going to them. And of course, your personal basic information and resume is not enough to summarize who you are. So this is in fact like a boon or a blessing in disguise when you get a blank slate and you can write enough to kind of convince the admissions committee of, taking you as a candidate and showing your proficiency and excellency in more ways than one. Okay, so this is what is the basic agenda of the SOP. And this is not a question that is going to be asked to you, but you need to develop a mindset that who your audience is, and accordingly your brain will start functioning about the kind of pointers you want to capture. Correct? Lastly, what is the importance of, about this factor? I'm sorry. Like the motivation and what are you trying to explain through the SOP? I mean, of course, it's a very generic way of explaining it. So what is it that you are trying to put across? So you are trying to put across your motivation, which is very important for them to understand why you have that zeal, that dedication, or that dream of chasing a particular business school or a particular tech side, university. You need to express openly about your interest in a particular course and university, which is very, very important. Okay. Also, they are not just limiting your understanding to a particular academic level. As I mentioned, you also need to show how extraordinary you are and how will you be contributing to the college, to the class, to any kind of ongoing events or clubs that we are having. Okay. And what makes you a perfect candidate? What is so different about you? What is so very inspiring about you? What is so differently explained about you? So these are some 3 to 4 pointers that we have kind of crunched it to make you understand that this is what your content should be in alignment with. Okay. Now there is a very interesting thing, that's the iSchoolConnect artificial intelligence tool, which also helps you analyze SOP. So almost you can say that a robotic editor is placed by the iSchoolConnect to help you analyze your whole SOP. Now this is just a mere screenshot. Towards the end, I'm going to take you through a live demo and explain to you how this whole function works. And I'm sure you'll be taken by a surprise that it's just by mere putting your content, you just get a little much, in fact, much more beyond of explanation and understanding of, analyzing your entire SOP. We have various tools which we have set up. So I request you to, wait for this demo till the end so that I can explain much more detail. Right. So this is just a screenshot of, explaining the 3 points that it's largely, covering the iSchoolConnect portal. It's the content suggestion, grammatical errors, and also reflects the word counts and gives you this whole readability factor to understand what is the level of your SOP and how much you need to improve or whether it's already improvised. Yeah. Okay, so that's the gist about your SOPs. Okay, we'll move to the next topic of the writing aspect, which is letter of recommendations. And to my surprise, no one in the poll mentioned about it. Now, I'm assuming either you all are very well aware of. Good. If you're not, I'll take you through it. And those who are aware of it, maybe it will be like a revision for you. Okay. So LOR to full form is nothing but letter of recommendations. Okay. And there are 2 formats of submitting LORs. Okay. So one, as you see on my screen, one is online. The other one that you see on my screen is the PDF screen. Okay. So I'll just give you a brief about it. Of course, the topic and there will be a lot of differentiations which has to be done, but I'll give you a generic understanding at a beginner level. So online LOR is nothing but while you do your applications, you just need to submit your referee's contact details, email ID, and whatever basic questions that they are asking for. As soon as you submit that to the university, a link will directly go to your recommender, and he will get like a small 5 to 6 question answer, what you can say, page or a Google Doc, you can say. It could not be exactly a Google Doc, but I'm making it more like a layman explanation here. So that's something you'll have to fill those 5-6 mini questions in the limit of 100 to 50 words and submit it. Okay. So in a way, it's directly going from the recommender's desk. Okay. Second is the PDF format, which sort of is like an indirect way of indirectly it's going, right? So PDF is nothing but it's a 1-pager letter that you need to prepare. Okay. Where your recommender will write a small letter about you of 3 to 4 paragraphs, sign at the end, put a stamp, and should be printed on. If it is a college LOR, it should be on a college letterhead. If it is from your workplace, it should be on your workplace letterhead. Okay. You take a picture of it, save it in PDF, and during the applications, you directly upload the LORs. Okay. So these are the 2 formats. Post-pandemic, the online LORs were absolutely taken care of, and even to till date, quite a lot of universities accept that, because we understand, reaching out to university and travel time was something which the university found that, okay, this was an issue. So they accepted it. However, online LOR, even before the pandemic, was a system for mostly MBA applications, correct? Because that's the only way that they were accepting it. So these are the 2 ways. Depending, it's good to have the PDFs. I always tell my students, whoever I'm catering, undergrad hai, postgrad hai, that please take a PDF, because that makes things quick, faster. Your application process moves faster. Online LOR thing is that if you've put the recommender's detail, and if he, receives the mail and kind of, because they have a schedule, that you will be stuck at that step for a couple of minutes or maybe a couple of hours. So Wherever it's mandatory, you have no choice. But if there is a scope, please take the PDFs well in advance so that your application can move a little bit on a faster pace. All right. Now, very important, because this is something when I have in my 5+ years of catering students, this is something I've very commonly come across, that who should be my recommender, or whom should I ask for, and how many should I ask for. Okay, so if you're going for an undergrad, or you can say bachelor's program, you need a total of 2 LORs. Okay, so one, it could be from your teachers, subject teachers, class teachers, or your school counselor, principal. Okay, depending on how you have shared a rapport, you need to get that. For your masters, 2 or 3, I always tell my students to take 3 LORs. Okay, because it's always, because there's also some, at some point giving, there's an extra space given to you where you can feed in your what you can say, where you can feed in your extra LOR, extra certificate. So it's like a win-win situation for you guys. Okay, so that's one thing. So you can take minimum of 2 or 3 3 recommendations for your postgrad programs. Okay, and if it's like a master's, 1 academic is mandatory and other 2 could be professional. Any combination would work, but if you're going for a master's program, or academic, 1 is mandatory. Okay, again for MBA, 2 or 3, again stick to the number 3. And here you can approach, since if you have a longer years of work experience, all of them could be from people whom you have worked with. Okay, your managers, your supervisors, someone who's a little bit more senior in terms of the hierarchy. Okay, or even clients works well. Okay, so that's something. And if you have lesser work experience, I would suggest you take 1 academic as well. There is no harm in taking academic. I always make that kind of a mandatory step for my children, for my students, basically. One more important FYI, personal family contacts or any of the ISC mentors as such would not be considered as valid recommenders. Okay, recommenders have to come from a very professional background or academic background, who have known you at a certain level. So I've had students who said that I have my uncle, and he has a big business and stuff. So those things would not work, right? Because that's like at the end of family connection. Mentors at iSchool, or generally if you have even any of your mentors whom you have always taken guidance since your childhood or something, again they won't work, because that's more like a personal connection you share with that person. Okay. Yeah, very important. I again for SOPs, of course, there are a lot of rules, guidelines. Similarly, there are for LORs as well. Correct. A lot of time we tend to take LOR as a most simpler format, which I also ironically tell my students that that's the easiest thing. You can maybe start working on LOR first and then come to SOPs. That's how I approach to my students for their timeline. But however, there's one thing to remember, that there is a certain way of writing LORs. Now, LOR is a third-party recommendation. Correct. So if your professors are writing, make sure there are these couple of do's and don'ts that are followed, so that the best quality of content comes out at the end. Okay, so I've taken only few highlights of do's and don'ts, and of course there are quite a few, but to crunch all of that in a short span of time is a little difficult. So the important do's for you is to firstly make sure that your recommender, whether it's your professor, principal, manager, client, whoever, highlights the qualities which are in sync with resume. Okay, so I'm sure in many ways you are explaining your position in your resume. Okay, you're mentioning your skills and abilities in your resume at some point. So make sure there is some kind of tandem or a link about. Okay. Secondly, always try to make sure that there are relevant examples or relevant points taken, okay, to elaborate a personality side of yours. Okay, and supporting LOR with the resume with an example is the most basic agenda, and I really feel a lot of times students tend to kind of not know about it, or kind of step away from it. So it's very important that when you're writing LOR, it's not a generic 3 to 4 paragraphs that for example, Sop is a good person, she has this quality, she has been working with me, she has a consistent scores. These are obvious pointers which should be mentioned, but again, take one or two part of your personality and give an example about it. Like, for example, I had handed Sabha a project which was, very crunched with a timeline of 2 weeks. She managed to do it, and I could witness her multitasking efforts. I could see the way she managed the team. I could see how productive she was at the end and made the project successfully submitted on time. Right, these 4 sentences, they look so simple to hear, but they give a whole history of how the student or this kind of employee must have been, right? So if you are having a conversation, and please make sure that you have a good rapport with whomever you have been eyeing for your recommenders, or even having a good rapport in general helps a lot in networking. So try to have that so that these kind of pointers will start reflecting. Couple of don'ts. So, of course, if any of y'all are for MBA or even for some of the master's program, as I told, the online LOR has this typical question where they ask about, explaining our recommender's weakness, or explaining some shortcomings of, a student's weakness or shortcomings. Okay, so it's very important to deal with this question very diligently. It's, of course, you don't have to negate it totally and write only positive things for the question. It's kind of contradictory. So mention the weakness, but in a diligent use of words and language. Okay, weakness could be maybe sometimes overwhelming, or having an overwhelming personality, or taking too many multitasking roles at a time. These could be a weakness that your professor or your manager has been noticing, and they can write about it. And also at the end, put a sentence where there is a scope of improvement that has been showing up in you. Okay, so that gives a holistic understanding. Okay, again, now LOR should not be taken as a platform to show an extreme form of flattery and stuff like that, right? So it should not have overwhelming sentences or extreme positivity which contradicts the kind of person you are in real. So keep it real, keep it moderate, keep a tone of positivity, but don't make it overwhelming in any extremes. Positives maybe, negatives maybe. Okay? So I hope this part is clear, and I hope I am being able to capture your attention to these aspects. There are only few slides left, so I would request you all to stay tuned. And of course, there is some more important factors I just need to consider this. Yeah. Quick tips of what qualities to highlight. Okay, so make sure that, because you all are, this is a third-party reference, try to make sure that your skills like time management or team building, interpersonal skills, organizational skills, dedication, zeal, right? All sincerity, all these qualities or skill sets are kind of brought out in the stories via examples, rather than very obviously mentioning it directly, like Sabha manages her time well. No, give an example at how Sabha managed her time. Give an example at how Sabha kind of believed in team building, or what are the efforts she took to make the team building. So make sure these things are put well, innovation and creativity of the individual, because now the LORs are not just taking a third party review or feedback of how you are, but these things are taken seriously as how you will fit in, because you are going to deal with much more diverse class, much more diverse kind of students, right, which have different experience, different cultures. So are you able to adapt or not? So this is why there are these kind of reasons of universities asking for LORs. So might as well write about it, so there's more clarity and more chances of it. Yeah, moving further. Okay, coming to most important part, which is your resumes or your CV. Yeah, again, very crucial, needs to be remembered. What are the basic components you need to cover in the resume or a CV? Or these are the basic, or you can say all the components that you need to cover. Do not again try to make your CV extremely overwhelming or give a very personal information. I've seen some, I've reviewed a few resumes where students are given their passport details, mention their GRE GMAT score, mention their marital status. So all this is the too personal things. You don't really need to mention them unless you are asked in a specific format, right? Keep it more formal. And of course, it's a glimpse of your personality, but not into your entire personal life. So there is a total difference. Yeah. So try to just cover what is given on the screen. It will also, this will help you crunch it in 1.5 to 2 pages, because of course 4 to 5 pages series, the admissions committee don't have the time to read. They can glance it in 30 to 60 seconds. That's the average time an admission committee has for series. So might as well capture them in 60 seconds rather than, giving so much information that it kind of, makes it too stretchy or overwhelming. Yeah. Number one, give out your personal basic details like your name, email ID, LinkedIn, your city and your country. Don't make it like a city, state and country. Okay. So just keep it as short as possible. Correct. Again, mentioning LinkedIn brings me to a little bit of digression. Networking is very important if you're going for an undergrad program or a postgrad. So if you have a LinkedIn, make it an active usage of it. If you are not having it, create it ASAP and start networking with various people over there, and you'll see the impact of it. I have personally witnessed it through my students. Second, give a small snapshot of your objective or about yourself in 3 to 4 sentences. Again, don't make it very flattery, just a gist of who you are, what have you been doing, what are your aims, something very basic. Okay. Then give your education details, then mention about your work experience, and again, don't be elaborative to even basic tasks like, manage day-to-day data. I think that's a very easy and a very basic thing in any job role, right? We all need to manage that. So don't mention something like that. Try to give more counterproductive aspects of what your job role is, so that there's an adequate description about that particular area. Correct? Then always, also one more thing in work experience, students, please make sure it's given in a third person point of view. Don't write that I have been handling too much, handled the project, right? Third person, monitor the thing, well equipped, all those third party verbs or adverbs you need to use, or that's how you need to digress here. Pointers for your work experience. Mention about your co-curricular activities, if you're doing sports, if you're doing something, NGO services, any of those aspects. Awards and recognition, if you've had some state level record or any kind of basic award that you have won for any competition, whether it's dance, art, music, or anything beyond some, a tech fest or any of those. Extracurriculars, you mention about your hobbies, extracurriculars, playing instruments, could be something even, posting articles on Instagram, because these days it's all about social networking. So if you mention about it, but of course mention in a diligent way. And lastly, your skills, the languages if you're going for a technical program, do mention the programming languages you have learned, certifications. So this area is something that you need to save for this part of your accolades. All right. Now, one more thing, there are, this is mostly for undergrad and MBA students, and also to some extent, very few programs ask for essays. Some short essay questions are asked. Okay, so essay is nothing but, so it's a short questions given to you and have a word limit. You need to write those and submit it to university. So it's again, as you say, it's, it's kind of highlighting about, in a more personalized way, it highlights who you are. Okay, and helps the admissions committee to understand you more than what you have listed in your resume and your academic records that are reflected in transcripts. Okay, and it's a very important portion of your application material. Okay, because these essays, as you can see, have a very specific agenda and specific questions. So these examples will help the admission officer or the admission committee to, understand you at a more personal level, and then make a decision that how good addition or a benefit you would be to the university or program. Okay. Now, to make this whole concept simplified, I can just tell you, again, this is the screenshot of the SOP tool that I'll obviously take you through later, so I can skip the slide. To make this whole, my explanation more simplified, these are the basic topics that, will be asked. So basically, there could be a question about your skills. Of course, a very elaborate question. Then there will be a question about your career goals, very important. Something about your strengths, your weaknesses, your success, your failures, achievements, anything. Why this particular university? Why this particular program? Anything mentioning an experience about how you experience diversity, or how did you handle leadership, or do you have any problem solving skills? If yes, when did you make use of such an approach? Correct. So these are the typical topics, and small questions will be framed on such topics around these to get a more personalized understanding of who you are. Yeah. Now, apart from, so this majorly my portion covers about so far a quick wrap of what I have explained to you. I've given you the application components. I've given you explanation of SOPs, LORs, resumes, short essays. Okay, just to give a quick understanding, because we've come so far, so it's important to understand what all, and it's overwhelming to take information at one point. Correct? And then these are few more other aspects of application that you need to keep in mind. To have a valid passport right from the beginning, you need to have passport because it will be required for approaching your test as well. So to book your test, you need to have a valid passport number. So in case you all have not made it so far, I'd suggest you to start doing that. Again, it takes a while. Test score reporting, that's up after you give your test, you have this facility of test score reporting. That means your official test scores needs to reach to university. Credential evaluation, especially for US and Canada, if you have a 3-year degree or even to some extent 4-year degree, requires a WES evaluation or any sort of evaluation. So you need to do that. And also to collate the financial documents for your visa steps. So it could be, your loan papers or any your bank statements, scholarship amount if you have received any. So all of that has to be given detail to understand how you'll be funding your entire program, including your living cost and other expenses. Okay, so this all also is crucial. Some of these steps are before the application, some of them these are during, and some of these are towards the end. But you need to know and be aware of what all things you will have to process in your applications. Okay, a quick understanding of interviews. Right, again, I think very few or none of them had clicked on this aspect of the while there was a poll running. There are 2 types of interviews. One is an admission interview and the other is a visa interview. I'll firstly explain the admission interview. This is a step which comes after you submit the application. Okay, after we have discussed all this, the application is submitted. Then if you are shortlisted, there is this for some programs. Now this is not catering to all, but quite a few like MIM here, MBA, even business analytics, or some fields of computer science engineering. Some universities and programs might have a short interview round. Okay, and to understand your profile better, and also to have more like an audio visual understanding. Okay, so that's where the admissions interview comes into picture. And it's more like, as a description mentions, like a formal conversation that you'll be having with any representative or any member of the university. Okay, and this is to they'll ask you a couple of questions, and the format of interview could be blind interview, very technical in nature, or could be a general personality interview. These are the kind of questions they'll ask. It could be, and basically the conduction will be on Skype or Zoom, and the duration could be anything between 15 minutes to half an hour, 1 hour, depending on the format of the interview. Okay, now remember, not everyone has an admission interview, or not every program is mandatory, but to know about it and be aware is very important, because sometimes in case if you have a less academic score or there are some gap years, so the admission, but the community likes your profile, so they might call you for interview to understand who you are exactly. Yeah. Other most important, visa interview, very mandatory, I think mostly for US, German, and a couple of other countries. Okay, so visa interview is again a quick but yet a formal way of understanding the student who's by now already received an admit and now almost approaching to visa. Okay, and basically they want to understand how aware you are, and just they'll ask you basic things about what program you're chosen, where have you been going, how well is your funding, and what is your overall profile. Just a quick understanding of that. Again, visa interviews are mostly conducted face to face, and they typically could last from 3 minutes, 5 minutes, and even more, depending on each country, depending on the visa officer, and depending on your profile as well, whether it could be stretched for more questions, it could be a little less as well. Yeah. Now, most important is just quick understanding of what are the parameters that your interview is analyzed on. I'll quickly run through them. Basically, it checks upon your communication skills and how confident you are, understands how good fit you are for the particular program, Okay, and if you're applying for a specialized program, what do you have that kind of skills and experience, or do you have that aim to learn those? So that's the knowledge and the thirst is kind of, you know, understood here. They also analyze your basic traits like your confidence, presence of mind, dedication to a chosen career, how relevant is your context of speaking to the question asked. So these are some of the very important yet very basic parameters that you are tested upon in an interview. Okay, now some very basic do's and don'ts that are captured here. Okay, so obvious do's that you can see, and now with the virtual world, you know, you've attended so many webinars and you can keep attending more that iSchoolConnect also keeps conducting. Okay, so this is also a way of learning how to, you know, present yourself in interviews. So do's are: make sure you're presentable, make sure you're clear, make sure you're audible, visible. There is a good amount of internet stability, some of the very basic aspects, how you handle your posture, hands-eye movement, gestures. All of these are good ways of, you know, taking an interview rather than being very, very, you know, static or very that kind of, you know, easygoing personality is something I would say required. And bringing a more candid approach rather than being extremely casual that you're talking to a friend. It's not going to be like that. And bring relevant anecdotes and understanding of the questions asked. Don'ts, couple of don'ts: please avoid some very controversial or open comparison, you know, especially when you're asked something about political scenarios or when you ask why this school and not that. So try to make a more diligent way of answering and tackling such questions. Okay, avoid repetition of words of I know it's a, you know, we do have this typical some by default language, what you can say, weakness, but try to make sure you're not repeating your words or repeating too many sentences. You don't make lengthy answers that it kind of bores them, or, you know, the context or the essence is lost. Try to not make it lengthy, and avoid long pauses. You know, sometimes your pauses are so obvious that it looks like you're taking time to think upon something. So try to avoid that and have the presence of mind. This will kind of train you well for the interviews. Okay. Now I'll take you through the demo that I have been holding you all up for, and that's very important as well. So this will give you a lot of understanding of a couple of things. Just give me a minute. Okay. So my screen is visible, right? Yeah. Okay, so this is the iSchoolConnect portal. Okay, and this can be definitely gone through. Firstly, you can go on the iSchoolConnect website, and there is this login or a register button. Now, I already have an account, so I've logged in and kept it ready. If you are a new person and you've just seen it for the first time, you can register here, and this will take you through some very basic things. Just a second. How do I move? Okay, I'll move this. Okay, I'll take this. Okay, so once you log into your account, your dashboard would look exactly like this because I've logged in as a student. Okay, so as a student, you will get to see your dashboard, which is similar to this. Maybe at an initial level, there will be no applications because you might have just registered and you have not started any application process. So this part would be empty. Now for you, the most important thing is firstly, immediately go on the profile part and upload all your details. Now this is a very AI tool. It's basically capturing every data you're giving to make your research engine or research of schools better, or give you better advices on your entire profile. So you need to fill up your entire profile details properly, like your name, education, right? Your experiences, whatever you have done, your test scores if you have taken, or if you have not taken, that's fine. And your preferences, most important, everything, your budget of salary, your budget for fees and everything. Now, this will help us generate recommendations for you. The more accurate the information here, the better the recommendation, okay? Because it's an AI tool, right? So you need, as soon as you fill these details, a list will appear to you, okay? We will, you can maybe refine your profile once, just to, you know, choose your specific country options. Like, for example, I've chosen USA, bachelor's. This is what I've basically chosen. Written some details here, and of course there's a lot of things on the profile which will by default this machine will capture, and then click on the submit button, which will help you generate a university list in 3 categories. Okay, So it will be in the dream category, reach and safe. 3 of them. These are the dreams. These are some of the reach category universities, and these are the safe category universities. Okay. So this is how it will appear. Correct. Then apart from this, the most important thing is you can also browse some courses individually. Okay, now example, you suddenly think of doing Australia as a country. So this is like a mini Google, to be honest. So in a layman word, okay, so you can maybe choose your country preference, everything from the left hand side, and then you can choose these filters: best match, best rank, acceptance rate, or your tuition fee, whatever is the most closest preference, and a list of university will generate in front of you. Okay, apart from that, you also have this important thing that I'm talking about since a while, that's the SOP tool. Okay, so once you finalize your university, they'll start appearing in my application, and then you will get then access to the SOP tool after you are, of course, mentoring at iSchoolConnect and taking the advice and stuff. You can then finalize your university, click on this SOP tool. For now, there is an SOP by default that we have put in for you for a demo. Yeah, just a minute. Yes. Okay, so see, as soon as you write your content, you can come and paste it here total. Okay, click on the analyze button, and that's where it will start analyzing everything. Like as I said, there is a facility of content errors as well as language errors. So in content, the orange means it's a little bad, red means there's a lot of improvement required, greens means it's thoroughly perfect. So as soon as you click, a drop down will appear and say what is lacking and what you need to improve. Okay, so that particular paragraph you can start referring and start making changes. Similar goes for other aspects. Language, it will capture whether you have a long para, whether you have a long sentence, right? If there is any grammatical errors that you'll have created, and active, passive voice and grammar, as we have. So it's not just a very basic tool, it's quite a lot of detailed, in-depth knowledge you will get by self-analyzing, and sitting on the tool for a couple of hours will make your SOP quite good to go. So it's very important, and there's a lot of things taken to make this SOP tool as easy and as adaptable for you all. So I'd suggest you to make use of this as you become an iSchool student, right? And of course, there are these additional services. Just to give you an understanding, you can look into the services that we provide. Even test preparation, as I mentioned in the beginning, we provide test preparation as well for Gre, Gmat, SAT, IELTS, TOEFL, all of these, correct? And again, the last part that I spoke about is interviews. So we also have an interview tool that's called a video interview tool, where you can practice. We'll obviously guide you how to do it, and it will also generate a report of how you have performed. Okay, so this is where it will give you a lot of understanding of what you need to improve and stuff. So, and also you will get to see how your recorded interview. Once you record, it will appear over here, give you a scoring, okay, and give you what are the questions asked and the rating, feedback, improvement. Okay, so this is all about the portal, correct? And that's just a minute. That's all that I had to explain from the portal and the features that are very important for you as a student to understand at this point. Okay, so this almost brings me to an end of my entire interaction. These are a WhatsApp group. You can join for quick updates and know more about iSchool. And that's the picture you can take to reach out to iSchoolConnect mentors, or get more information through dropping us an email or joining any of our social media handles. Yeah. Now I open the platform for Q&A. It'll be great if I can help you understand more and answer your questions. Okay, so as of now, okay, there's a question from an anonymous. Also, if you can place your names, it will be good. I can address you all in a more personalized format. Someone has asked me that, can you mention about the topic, tell about topic test? So I'm quite not sure what the question means, but I think if you're referring to the kind of topics that test will cover about Gre, Gmat, I just shared it in the screenshot there. Yeah. Any random questions you can ask, any basic questions also. I am very, I'll be more than happy to kind of address that in this platform. Anything we have to put, anything very basic. It could be about SOP, LORs, or just general about timeline. I can help you understand that. Okay, Taha Khan has asked a question. What if a country I'm applying for is not in the option of iSchoolConnect? So typically, Taha, we have comprised of almost all the popular destinations for study abroad as an international student. Okay, so I don't think so that would be much of an issue. In case if something like this arises, we almost have quite a lot of trained mentors from various for various destinations. So hopefully you will be getting the best services for whatever option you have chosen. I hope I have answered your question in the way it has to be. Shruti Deshpande is asking, I am going for a fall 2023. What is the best time to write SOP and how much time it will take? Very good. Interesting question, Shruti. So firstly, all the best for the fall 23. Now, if you're planning a intake which is 1 year ahead from now, typically I tell students to start conceptualizing on your SOP basic general draft by August first week. Okay, make a first draft by August first week, because see, the draft you make is not the final one. It will go through reiterations and it's not an overnight writing also. The first week of August dedicated to writing. It could take 1 day, 2 days, depending on how you have been, preparing for it. Then the second week would be all our back and forth between you and the iSchoolConnect mentors, or apart from using the tool, will also help you manually do a final check as well. So that second week could be about getting the drafts final. So it is almost a 2 to 3 week job, sometimes even more, depending on individual skills of writing. So August is a good time to start off with that. Okay, Atul Thomas has asked, which English test should I opt for? TOEFL or IELTS? Yes. Okay, Atul. So one more thing. So as I told you, even if you're going for a postgrad or an undergrad program, either of the tests will work. As I showed a previous, slide of the test and the countries accepting it. Nowadays, there is no myth that TOEFL is only restricted to to US, or IELTS is not accepted in or TOEFL is not accepted in UK, vice versa. ऐसे नहीं है. Most of the countries accept both the tests, so that would not be an issue. You can opt for any of it. And speaking about the content wise, see, both has its own set of approach. The context is different. Submit reading language, reading, writing or listening है, but concept different है, questions different है. So you can opt for any which you feel more comfortable. Is Duolingo accepted in colleges in US? A very good question by Purnima. So I would suggest you to stick to TOEFL or IELTS. See, Duolingo is a test which would again have some amount of restrictions, because not every university and program would accept it. Duolingo is something which was more an option during the pandemic, because it was more like a home test and it was more accessible and easy. So I would suggest you to not take up Duolingo unless you have a very, very, very shortlisted university which is accepting. It's fine. Otherwise, TOEFL IELTS is a better choice. Okay, so there is someone who has asked me to show the study abroad roadmap slide. I'll just quickly do that. Yeah, that's the roadmap. What about, okay, while you all can have a look at the roadmap once again, I'll answer question asked by Purnima. What about the LORs, when to start writing them? Good question. So Purnima, again, I would suggest you to reserve the entire month of August for the writing part. SOPs and LOR both can happen. First, you can get done with, I would suggest you to first get done with maybe SOP if that's something you have more pressure for, or LOR is something you can take up later. Okay. And you will have to, it compared to SOP, it's a easy writing, as I say, so it will take around, let's say, 1 or 2 days to draft that letter. But then the process followed after that is a little hectic. You'll have to visit your college or your office, get it proofread by your manager or person who is a recommender at the end, get it printed on the letterhead. So all that will take 2 to 3 weeks, 2 weeks time. So again, I would suggest second week or third week of August you can start writing. In fact, second week of August is better. While you're reiterating your SOP, that's an easy task. You can handle the SOP writing that time. Okay. So recommend, again, a student has asked, will it be a problem if I do not have a recommendation letter? So you mean a letter in wholesome, or if you mean that not having it on the letterhead? I'll answer in both the situations because the question is a little ambiguous. So the letter of recommendation is a mandatory aspect of your application. Without that, you cannot move further. Okay. But again, if it is not on the letterhead, it's fine. You can, if you are having that option of doing an online LOR, you can submit your referee's detail so they can receive a direct link for the questions and they can fill and submit it from their side. Okay. But it is mandatory. You cannot skip the LOR step at any point. It's as important as submitting your SOP. Yeah, any more questions? And yeah, just one more thing about the roadmap. As I told you, of course, this is a whole 1-year engagement that we have charted. But again, an FYI, students, if you are still planning a January 23 intake, which is also referred as spring, or if you are planning a fall 23 intake, which is referred also as September, October, even if you have just planned about it, do not panic or get hassled. Speak to iSchoolConnect mentors. Whatever time we have, we'll try to utilize and get the best construction for you. Okay. Shruti Deshpande has asked me one more question. I have done some volunteer work in Robin Hood Army. How can I add it in my SOP? Interesting question. So again, volunteer work, firstly, Shruti, try to mention about it in the resume as well. Secondly, how to loop in your SOP. Now, SOP is a tabula rasa. Tabula rasa is nothing, if translated in English, it's a blank slate where you can formulate your story in your way. So you can dedicate one, para, your fourth or fifth para, where you can, collate all the stories about your extracurriculars, your voluntary services, NGO services. Okay. And you can mention that apart from, regular things and career goals and going abroad, how you have been, contributing to the society. And this, just don't mention about it. Try to, in a way, weave a story that shows your empathy side, that shows your sensitivity towards society. So that's the personality traits. It's going to, you can capture that in this thing. One small para about your extracurriculars can be mentioned in your SOP, but again, it should not look like summarizing the resume. So try to make it more interesting as a content. I think I've answered the question about fall 23 intake and when to start off SOP. Yeah. Any more questions? All of your questions are pretty interesting, and I hope, apart from the person who has asked, others have also gained similar information and knowledge as well.
Hey, so I think this would be a great time to wrap up the session. We're at the end of our time as well. We have no more pending questions left. So, like, anything else you would like to say to the student before they sign off?
So I would want to wish all the attendees a good luck, all the best. Also, thank you for taking out time, as mentioned by Sritama, on a Saturday evening. I think you can go back to rejuvenating now, and also a little bit shared thoughts on how to start off, further with your application process. So that's it. If you have any further queries, feel free to reach out. It was amazing interacting. Also, thanks to Sritama, big shout out to kind of, support me and co-host me.
Thank you so much, Sabha. Everyone, have a lovely weekend, and bye-bye. Hope to see you soon again.
Yeah. Thank you. Good evening and good night.